Hello, everybody. I'm Riley Woodall, and welcome to the Toss-Up. With so much talk about the NFL, NBA, and college basketball, this week we're going to be covering a sport that is near and dear to my heart, college wrestling. In the words of my good friend and co-host Joe Cronin, buckle up because you might get Matt returned. We got a jam-packed episode for you coming up on the Toss-Up. College wrestling has brought us some of the best stories and moments in all of sports, and this season is no different. The grueling schedule of the Big Ten Conference continues. Who will come out on top? Will illustrious Penn State head coach Cale Sanderson win his 11th NCAA title in 14 years? Purdue's Matt Ramos, a shot at redemption after falling just one match short of an NCAA title last year. Can he do it this time? And of course, the new rule changes in the offseason that broke over a century of tradition. Are they here to stay? We're going to talk about all that. I'm joined by an amazing group of gentlemen here, Adam Oppenheim and Quincy Coffield, IUSTV Sports Wrestling beat reporters, and Griffin Healy, Indiana wrestling analyst. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on the show. I've been super excited for this show ever since I got the notion or notified that I was going to be Toss-Up host. So, it's always a fun one. So I want to ask you, the new rule changes headed by the three-point takedown. Encouraging offensive wrestling. Offense sells in modern day sports at this point in time. They're trying to bring more people to the sport of college wrestling. Do you like it? Do you not like it? And is it here to stay? Adam.
I'm not a huge fan of the three-point takedown rule, but I think it does give an incentive that you can come back later in a match, and also you can score a lot more points. 3 compared to 2 when you're talking about 4 or 5 takedowns is a huge difference in the number of points scored. But the big one for me that I really like is calling stalling more, because there were way too many times last year and the past few years wrestling that the person on top would kind of just stay there with their hands and not do much, or standing up neutral. So it gives them more of an incentive to, wrestling, go at each other more.
Quincy.
Personally, like Adam, I don't like the three-point. I'm too used to yelling too. However, I agree. I think the three-point is more action. It creates more, and it drastically changes the match. You watch how in the past, you go down 5-0, you score a takedown. Instead of 5-2, it's now 5-3. That completely flips your strategy, your style. One rule change I'm really interested to see to play out is the new near fall. Whereas before, a couple years ago, they changed it to 2 and 4, depending on the swipes. Whereas this year now, if you get 3 swipes, 3 points, 4 swipes, 4 points, 5 swipes, 5 points. That can drastically change the match, especially if you got great people that are great at back points. So I'm just very interested to see how drastically that can also change matches as well.
Yeah, a lot more major decisions, a lot more tech falls, matches going a lot faster as well with the three-point takedown. Griffin.
Couldn't agree more with these two gentlemen right here. I think that it is important to note that, yes, it does change your complete strategy if you do get not a takedown, but a three-point takedown instead of a 2-point. Gives you that more of an incentive to go on. But I do also really like the fact that they're calling stalling more. I mean, like Adam said, there have been far too many times he and I, when we covered it last year, you just have 2 minutes, and it's like all of a sudden you just have like 3 straight minutes of just calling stallings and whatnot, and they've been very lenient with it. Now you're getting more action, and I think by calling it, it actually gets people to enjoy the sport more for its action and not just for, essentially wasting time.
My question is, how long is it going to take before it bleeds down to the high school level? That's what I'm curious about. It probably won't take more than a couple years, I think. I think the high school wrestling is going to adopt that as well. Griffin, I'm going right back to you. Indiana's coming off their first Big Ten dual meet win of the season against Maryland, 21-15 inside Wilkinson Hall. What were some of the keys when you were watching that match that allowed the Hoosiers to win over the Terps?
Yeah, I think they really just utilized a lot of their middle class or middle weight classes. I think over the past few years they had been really struggling with that. Last year was no exception. They kept changing 157 and 165. And they were good on the heavy side and they were good on the the light side. I think now they actually have wrestlers who can compete and start in that without Escobedo having to go and just change it every week or every match.
You too.
I'll go ahead and start. Me personally, I think something I found interesting was they started out very aggressive but very slow tempo shots, more or less setting up the perfect opportunity more than as past. They just wrestle your style, take it on. I've noticed they were more or less, we're going to go for points, be more aggressive, be more thoughtful in your shots. And with them thinking like that, this pushed them to be more aggressive, set up your shots more, and then even if you don't get your perfect shot, just push your opponent, push their edge, and then much like Nick Williams' match or much like DJ Washington's match, that goes on where you pull out a takedown or you pull out an escape match in the third period, that's where the match is won, right there in the third period. So I think that was really, Angel really wanted to, instead of winning third period, because especially a lot of those top guys, you're going to try to beat them third period overtime and such.
Adam, some things you saw in the dual meet, and then predictions for the rest of the Hoosiers season coming up.
Well, for the dual meet, I saw, like Quincy mentioned, a lot of third-period wins. DJ Washington went down to the wire. Nick Wilhelm, to win the match, went down to the wire. Roman Roganski got some big extra points in the third period, and that really helps you to flip the match, and they haven't exactly been able to do that in previous years, so that was really great to see.
So, Quincy, I'm going to go to you first on this one. Penn State has just been on a tear this season, as they have been for the majority of the last decade, right, with Cale Sanderson is the head coach for the Nittany Lions. So I'm not going to ask you which team you think is going to beat Penn State. I'm just going to ask you, as you dissect this team, how in the world do you beat Penn State in a dual meet?
Well, that's a very hard question to answer. It's not necessarily good. You have people such as Aaron Nagel who are dominating the 133 weight class. So when you break it down as your wrestlers, you want to try and just much like what they did to Maryland, you want to try and run them down, try and run them out, try and use your superior condition, try and set up your perfect opportunity to win in the third period. Because a lot of these matches could be won in the third period, won in overtime, like Roman Rogatski's match. He lost in overtime. That was a match that could have easily won. He pushed that kid. No one expected him to do that sort of thing. So that's what's really expected, to push these kids, and really, they don't expect IU to do that. I think that's really, or any team to do that. I think that's really just push them past their limit and really just push them to the brink each time.
Griffin, how do you take down the Nittany Lions?
Yeah, kind of like what he said. You just have to really, work and push them to their limits. Penn State, it's no secret that they're stacked from top to bottom. Every wrestler they have is, a national contender. I think it just comes down to really pushing it, kind of like what you just said. Just keep pushing them to their limits and steal points away. That's really all you can do. I know that they've been on a dominant tear, but there are going to be some matches where the wrestler just gives up some points, and I think if you take advantage of those opportunities, you can sneak away.
Adam.
I think you just got to avoid the pin or the tech fall in some cases to just limit the points. And a lot of people, what they don't realize if you don't watch a lot of college wrestling, Penn State, for years has been a dominant team, like one of the most dominating teams in all of college sports. So it's easier said than done to upset someone in wrestling when they have like 80% of their team in the top 5 rankings.
So as we look forward into the rest of January, February, and into March when tournament time comes around, what is the best duel on the docket? Can be Big Ten Conference, can be anywhere in the sport of college wrestling. Adam, the duel you are most looking forward to the rest of the season?
It's got to be the Iowa-Penn State at Iowa in February. It's going to be super exciting. The last team that wasn't a national champion besides Penn State was Iowa. Of course, there was the COVID year, so
right.
Penn State didn't win that year. So.
Yeah, you too.
So I've personally said IU Purdue. It's a big rivalry match. Matt Ramos coming in, of course, a very dominant wrestler. IU has several ranked wrestlers of their own. Another match I'm probably very interested in, Michigan State, Michigan, if they haven't already wrestled. I feel like, that, of course, another rivalry. I love rivalry matches. They're my favorite. There's a lot of intensity. It's a lot of fire.
Tensions flaring in that one. Yeah,
Yes.
Definitely. A lot of emotion. Griffin.
Yeah, I mean, you guys had great ones. Two that always come to mind, at least from what I've seen in the past, and if they continue this year as well. stuck between Nebraska and Purdue. Last year, the Boilermakers defeated the Cornhuskers for the first time since 2004. And I think there is a great opportunity to see those two clash at it again. And another one, too, that's really underrated is Michigan State, Indiana. I mean, I think those two programs are always competitive against each other. You always have a thrilling match, whether it's up at East Lansing or at Wilkinson Hall. And Michigan State's head coach being an Indiana program alumnus, I think that just adds more to the storyline.
I'll throw in one that is going on the day that the show is going to be posted. That's Michigan and Ohio State. Another rivalry matchup. It's going to be rivalry weekend for, you know, all of college wrestling. And so that one's always a fun one to watch. Two very solid ranked teams. Got a lot of ranked guys in a bunch of different weight classes. Anything can happen. So, Griff, last question for you. Who is going to win the Big Ten tournament, and who comes away with the national title this year?
I mean, I think the obvious answer is Penn State. I think they're going to be the eventual national champions, and I think they will be the Big Ten champions. However, I do think there is a case for the Iowa Hawkeyes as well. I think that they have the most competitive squad, and going back to the Nittany Lions question, and I think they're a program that can absolutely push Penn State to its limits.
Yeah, it'd be remarkable if they were able to do that, especially with a lot of their wrestlers getting their careers ended because of the gambling scandal that happened earlier on this year. Quincy.
I, too, will also say Purdue, going for the Big Tens. However, coming down to the NCAAs, I see in recent years Iowa gets very, very fierce towards the NCAAs, so I feel I can go either way between Penn State and Iowa. I feel like a sleeper team I want to keep my eye on is Missouri. They are currently ranked number 2. They have several top 5 ranked wrestlers, so I think they could be a very interesting team to watch in the finals.
Adam, take us home.
Yeah, I think for me, it just has to be Penn State. And not only is it the wrestlers, but you mentioned their coach, Cale Sanderson, never lost in his collegiate career. He was one of the greatest collegiate stories of all time. And you have one of the greatest wrestlers coaching the top 5 wrestler in every weight class. It's so hard to beat.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to come down to Penn State, Iowa, in my opinion. I think we're going to have a lot of questions answered when those two finally square off here in a couple weeks in a dual meet. That's going to be an exciting one going on in Carver Hawkeye. But Griffin, Quincy, Adam, thank you so much for joining me. Coming up after the break, DJ Washington joins the show for another exclusive toss-up interview. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show, everyone. We have a very special guest in the studio with us. I am incredibly excited to welcome senior 174-pounder DJ Washington. DJ, thanks for coming on the show, my man.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you're 12-2 on the season this year, 3-time NCAA qualifier in your career at Indiana. What has your journey and development been like from the time that you started as a Hoosier to where you are now?
I would guess from the time that I started as a Hoosier, I came in as the lowest recruit. So it's been interesting. It's been very nice to see how far it's taken me and how the work we put in is what we see out there on the mat.
So from your perspective as a wrestler, how have you seen this program grow from your time here, and how has Coach Escobedo really built Indiana wrestling up to be better and better year after year?
Just setting a standard. You know, when I first got here, I think my first year we maybe won. Oh, no, we didn't win any duels that year. And then in the next coming year, we won a couple. We might have won 1 or 2, or we like 2 years ago, we only won 3 duels. And it was just like no matter how we were doing, he kept a high standard. So then it was just like, as long as we met that standard, we saw the progress, you know.
So you went to Portage High School, 2-time IHSAA state placer. You said before in an interview that Coach Escobedo took a chance on you. What was it like getting that first initial phone call from him asking you to come wrestle at Indiana?
It was exciting. It was exciting because I already had 2 former teammates that I grew up wrestling with here on the team, and I always looked at Indiana as a high program that I would like to go to on the next level, but I just never thought I would ever get there. So it was very exciting to get that call.
So when you were growing up, when did you know that you really, really loved the sport of wrestling?
Probably about 8 years old. I feel like I started off playing football and learned that I wasn't really a team-oriented person. You know, I really saw wrestling as something that I could do for myself. And like when you went out there, it's like you're almost like alone, and it's like a personal win each time.
So some goals that you have not reached yet in your time in Indiana that are still on the docket, still places you want to go, things you want to do, and what is it going to take for you to reach those goals with the rest of your time?
I think what it takes for me to reach those goals is just understanding a little bit more of that it's more than wrestling, and there's a mental aspect. Some of the goals that I haven't reached yet are just like making it back to those world championships, becoming a world medalist, a world champion, obviously going back to NCAAs, becoming an NCAA champion. I feel like I've wrestled those top guys in the country. I've beat those top guys, and that is just more than wrestling, and I'm right there.
From the time that you started wrestling when you were 8 years old to where you are now as a Indiana wrestler in college, what has this sport taught you?
It's taught me consistency, dedication, and grit, I would say.
So last question for you. You are a sports marketing and management major. What are the future plans of DJ Washington after graduation off the mat?
Off the mat, I would like to work somewhere close in like a sports company, because I'm still going to stay here and train for the World Championships and Olympics through our RTC program. So off the mat, I would like to work somewhere close, I would say, but I'm not too sure yet.
Yeah. Hey, don't know what the future holds, but it's exciting. DJ Washington, appreciate the time, my man.
No problem.
That's going to do it for us this week. Be sure to continue the discussion and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at IUSTV Sports. Indiana and Purdue square off inside Wilkinson Hall Saturday night at 7 live on Big Ten Plus. Joe Cronin will be with you in the studio next week. As always, toss it up, find out if we'll catch it, and we'll see you next time. God bless.